This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, the Brewers got a walk-off bunt from Bryce Terang to beat Kansas City 3-2 this afternoon in 11 innings. Milwaukee had scored a run in the 10th and loaded the bases, but couldn't get another run across after Jared Koenig threw up a scoreless top of the 11th. Oliver Dunn got into scoring position before Terang dropped down the bunt to bring him home and set off a wild celebration at American Family Field. Milwaukee was in that position because of a strong effort from Freddie Peralta and a couple of big hits from Jackson Chourio. Peralta went 8 innings, allowed just 1 run on 2 hits and struck out 8. Matched the longest start of his career. Just the second time he's gone 8 innings. Chourio hit his first home run of the year in the first inning and then was the guy who drove in the game-time run in the 10th to send the game to the 11th. The win allowed the Crew to take 2 of 3 from Kansas City and they earned the series win. After allowing 47 runs in the first 4 games, Brewers gave up just 2 in their last 2. They will welcome the Reds tomorrow for the start of a 4-game weekend series at American Family Field.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Farmers deal with a lot, including long days, stress, and fatigue. This is your reminder to take breaks, stretch, have a snack, and hydrate your body. Avoid farm accidents by keeping yourself healthy. Visit ruralmutual.com to learn how Rural Mutual supports Wisconsin farmers and prioritize safety on the farm.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the Bucks are headed to Philly. It's where they're going to take on the 76ers tomorrow. Milwaukee would be the number 6 seed in the playoffs if they started today. Just 7 games left here in the regular season. Meanwhile, Wisconsin forward Chris Hodges is in the transfer portal. Rarely played the last 4 seasons. He's the 3rd Badger player to enter the portal. NFL draft in Green Bay getting going 3 weeks from tomorrow. And Wisconsin getting back on the field for practice number 6 of spring tomorrow morning in Madison. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heilprin.
The decision to drop down the bunt, was that your decision, or what did Pat Murphy tell you right before you went up?
He said if it's open and you feel good, then do it. So, chose to do it.
Bryce, how hard is it to execute that? It's got to be the right spot, right time, right?
Yeah, you just got to stick your nose in it and get it down.
What can you say about the job that the team did to pull off this win, starting with Freddie Peralta, 8 innings, 1 run ball, 8 strikeouts to set the tone early?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, what he did is great. He kept us in the game, pitched his game, and it's great. It's so much fun to watch.
How fun are these games to play in, Bryce? I know defensively there were a lot of great plays made behind Freddie Peralta, the bullpen as well, Trevor McGill, Abner Uribe, Jared Koenig closing it out.
Yeah, it's really fun. Those guys are so good. It's just fun to play defense with them. They're just throwing gas and striking people out. It's been a great time.
This team has flipped the script, a 4-game losing streak, and now your first series win. How much of the last 2 games just changed the momentum for you guys?
Yeah, it's so early in the season. You can't really look at that. You got to forget it and move on and play our game. So I think the boys did that.
How's the finger, Bryce? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
No worries there. All right, Bryce Terang, congratulations. 2nd career walk-off for him.
Thank you.
And Terang does square, gets a bunt down. Here comes Ted. He scores! A squeeze bunt walk-off for Bryce Terang.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Some sound from the end of the game. The Brewers walk it off in the 11th, as Zach Heilprin mentioned, and yet another excellent sports update. Appreciate Zach. That's the highlight and the interview on the field with the what's the opposite of long-winded? Short-winded? Is that a thing? With the short-winded Bryce Terang, typically short answers. And I feel for Sophia because I've been there, when you're interviewing. I mean, I haven't been. I've been on the field or on television. But I interview people for the show. I'm not saying that I'm Sophia Menard here, but sometimes you're interviewing someone, you ask a question, and then you think you have a minute or 2 to think of your next question, and sometimes they give you a short answer. You got to have your questions ready to go with someone like Bryce Terang. Because if you get good answers, but they're short. So a good on-field interview with Sophia and Bryce Terang after the game. The Brewers win 3-2. And this was kind of a funny game because both starters were unbelievable. Freddie Peralta, that's one of his best starts in a while, maybe one of the best starts of his career. The game started at 12:10, And it's been a couple hours now, and I was trying to get some other work done this afternoon, so I lost track a little bit. But I can tell you for sure that I was still on the air with Bill. The show had yet to end before 2 when the Brewers put 2 on in the 7th. From 12:10 to like 1:50, this game went first inning to 7th inning, and then because baseball, sometimes a weird game, the game still needed what? An additional 2 hours to end because it ended up going to extras, and there were some rallies that didn't result in one team winning. So what looked like was going to be this blinding, 2-hour affair turned into actually a pretty long and pretty action-filled, not necessarily filled with scoring, but plenty of action over the last couple of innings, and the Brewers end up winning 3-2. Needed that. For whatever reason, big difference between 1-5 and 2-4, and the Brewers after starting about as badly as you can possibly start, and I don't think that's hyperbole. Win series number 2. And if you can just win series, if you just win 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3, as they continue to get healthy, this team should be in an okay spot. They should be in a good spot. I should give them more credit than that. This is the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. Happy to be here. This is the last time we're going to have a chance to talk until next Friday because I'm leaving for a trip tomorrow night. So if you have anything to say it now, because we're going to have to wait a week. So I will take your calls. First segment on the Brewers if you're ready to go. 608-321-1670. A little bit of a de facto postgame show. And I know some of our affiliates are Brewers Radio Network stations. And I think the postgame show is probably still going, probably wrapping up pretty soon. So as other affiliates, WKTY and WAYY in La Crosse and Eau Claire, WNAM, our listeners up in Menominee, Marinette, as the Brewers drop out, we get those listeners in. We can keep the post-game show going. And again, I'll come to your calls first segment if you're ready, because we got a lot to talk about between last night and this afternoon. 608-321-1670. I was very pleased with how last night's game went. Not just because they won, although that was excellent, but the first 4 games of the year, it's like, this team stinks, and we're going to fill the show talking about how much they stink. And sometimes that's fun. Sometimes that's good sports talk radio. Just everyone's angry and we're complaining and we're lamenting just like you would at a bar over a beer. Like sometimes that could be fun. The problem is that show is only entertaining for 1, maybe 2 shows in a row. And then it's like, okay, we can't just whine from 4 to 6 every night. Like I actually want to talk about the baseball team. I actually want to have things to talk about. And last night's win was great because it's a win, but they also there's some nice meat on the bone between these last 2 games. There's some nice topics. I thought last night what Bryce Terang did in the leadoff spot, and I know he actually had a rough game today, a couple of strikeouts and didn't do a whole lot offensively, came through in the clutch in the 11th with that walk-off bunt. But one of my takeaways from last night's game is I think Bryce Terang, until further notice, should just be the full-time leadoff hitter of this team. I don't really care about righty-lefty too much, although he struggled against lefties today, but I think the best course of action for Pat Murphy and this team right now is they try to get their sea legs under him after a really bad start. I think Bryce Terang should just be the full-time leadoff hitter. And I'm not really worried about righty-lefty. I think you just got to put him in the leadoff spot and hope that you can get the version of Bryce Terang that we saw for basically the first half of the season last year. And then he wasn't as good in the second half of the year, but in spots and for stretches, still a pretty good leadoff hitter. So one of my big takeaways that I wrote down immediately last night was I just think that Bryce Terang's got to be the leadoff hitter for this team. And yeah, he's going to have bad offensive nights, but if he can take a walk here and there or situationally put the ball in play on a bunt, I think he just needs to be your leadoff hitter. Very intrigued last night and might be interesting moving forward on the show as we have some nerdy baseball talk. Eric Haas comes in, calls a really good game for Chad Patrick and hits a home run. I think there's a role for Eric Haas on this team, and it's magnified right now because William Contreras is off to such a poor start, which we carped about, for probably a good half for a third of the show last night. Eric Haas performing really well. Now, he didn't get in the game today. I thought maybe he would, but Yelich also got the day off today, so he entered later as a pinch hitter. You already had some nice bats on the bench. You didn't really need to go to Eric Haas, but I thought the way that he performed, called a good game, framed really well for Chad Patrick, especially at the top of the strike zone. And I saw Jack Stern, who does some really heady Brewers work for Brewer Fanatic, posting some clips and some details about that today. I thought that was fascinating last night. The Yelich bomb, anytime you see Yelich hit with power, I want that. I need more of that. That's something that we can sink our teeth into today. And the bullpen performing the way that it did last night and today, I think very important. I understand. I think we all understand that this team is in a rough spot right now, waiting for Quintana, waiting for Tobias Myers, waiting for Godot. That's a play, but you get the point. They're waiting for a lot of pitchers to get healthy. They're trying to just tread water. So I understand it's not always going to look pretty, and it certainly wasn't pretty in New York, and it wasn't pretty on the home opener. But when you have opportunities to line up the relievers that you still really trust, right? The relievers that should still perform at a really high level for you, McGill, I think Uribe came in last night in a 2-0 ball game with runners on. Like, that game was not decided when Uribe came in, and he slammed the door very quickly for the third out and then came out and pitched the next inning. Uribe looking elite is very important because, and we talked about this last night, Buster Olney brought this up on Twitter, ESPN baseball guy, very, very good. Obviously, I don't mean to, he's a baseball guy at ESPN, but if, you all know Buster Olney, pointing out that the Brewers' average fastball velocity compared to the rest of baseball is unbelievably low. So, guy like Uribe, who can actually shove and actually throw really hard, like, that's an important piece of their pitching staff right now. And McGill making it look as easy as he did in the ninth, and also was excellent tonight in the ninth. I know some of their pitching, especially their rotation, in flux right now. It's not all going to be great, and it certainly hasn't been great through 6 games. But yesterday and today, when they had opportunities with a lead or in a normal game state, when they're not trailing by a pile and the game's actually competitive, when they've had opportunities yesterday and today to use what should be their best relievers, they've come through and performed really well. So if you were, worried about this team and their ability to like tread water, waiting for some healthy arms to come back, I think they more than showed the ability to do that last night and today. And I think those are some of the important talking points. Again, great to have 2 Brewers wins, but some real good meat on the bone and some real good things for us to pick at and to discuss on tonight's show. I said I'd come to your phone calls. We got a couple, so let's talk Brewers. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
It's Darnell.
Hey, Darnell, what's up?
Hey, nice early call here for a nice early Brewers victory.
Say.
They're doing all of this with like the longest pitching injured list that I've ever seen at the start of the season. Like, I just typed it into my computer. I was like, oh my gosh, let's take a look. I didn't realize Ashby was out.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I didn't know Nick Mears was out.
Yeah, although
I forgot about him.
He performed. I think he threw last night or today. I don't know. It runs together anytime there's a show where we're talking about 2 Brewers games, it starts to run together in my mind a little bit. But they're waiting on Mears. They're waiting on Ashby. I mean, I wouldn't say they're waiting on DL Hall because he's on the 60-day, but that's an arm that's out of commission too. They're missing a lot of guys.
And that's just relief guys. Like, they're doing this again. They started the season very, very poorly, especially out of the bullpen. I mean, both sides of that were pretty terrible against the Yankees. But the last 2 days, if they can do this kind of pitching over the next couple of weeks while they're waiting for some of these guys to come back, and I don't know why they didn't play Haas again today after just Rock likes to say he's like immediate energy, immediate juice.
Yeah.
Right. He's always producing positive outcomes, whether it's, behind the plate or at the plate. Right. Like, that's what he does. He's always doing positive things for the team. So I just don't know why they don't have him in there as often. I don't know if he's trying, I think Murph might be kind of trying to push Contreras and say, no, we believe in you. Just work through it. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, okay. Well, and here's the tricky part. Okay. So I'm with you on Haas, especially after he performed last night. He framed beautifully, called a great game for Chad Patrick. There was a definite connection. Those two were familiar with each other, and he hit a home run again. So I've been annoyed by Contreras, and he's certainly been off to a really, really poor start. But the idea that, like, they're supposed to split time between William Contreras and Eric Haas, like, that's just not realistic. As much as we've complained about Contreras, and he had far from a great day today, too. I think he had 2 strikeouts, 2 ground balls. And then he was walked in extras because, well, first base was open and wasn't the worst outcome for the Royals anyways to set up the force. And then Contreras was already ahead in the count, so they said, screw it, we'll walk him. So I can't hold that at bat against him. Like, William Contreras still stands to be, if not their best, one of their best players. He's just been off to such a bad start. And Murphy, it's not totally surprising letting him hit through it. You're not going to bench him, multiple days in a row. You're probably not going to DH him multiple days in a row. And you want to be able to use that DH spot on others as well. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant. Happy Liberation Day. How we looking?
I see you tweeting about that. What is that? Is that like a legit holiday or is that a bit? Explain this to me.
It was Trump's announcement of all the reciprocal tariffs going into place. America's liberated. We're all rich again. Income tax going away very soon.
Oh, well, that's good to know. I hope that's true. Is that now that the elections are done? I'm just glad, and we talked about it with Darnell last night. I'm just glad the election's done. I'm done with the election commercials.
Yeah, you guys are also liberated from those ads.
That's true.
All good news all around. I think equally low as I was on the Brewers the first 4 games, I've been equally as high on them these last 2. I mean, Chad Patrick, I hate to say it, but he saved the season last night with that start.
So if people are always going to roll your eyes. They're going to roll their eyes and they're going to, oh, come on, save the season. Man, to start 0-5 and to lose your second straight game to open the season at home, I'm not going to say the season would have been over, but someone had to have that performance. And luckily, they got 2 of them in 2 days, right? Because Freddie was dominant today. But I don't know. I don't think we can overstate, at least right now, the importance of that performance from Chad Patrick last night. I think you're right, Cone.
Yeah, and it was fun just to see, he first big league start. He had his friends and family all at the ballpark.
Yeah.
Sophia interviewing them. That's always fun. What was I going to say? I love Turang in the leadoff spot. Agree with you there. It seems just like, before all these analytics and Moneyball took over, Bryce Turang is a stereotypical leadoff hitter.
Yeah.
Gets on base, can steal a few bags, speed, everything. So I love him in the leadoff spot as well. And Churio, good to see him ripping the ball today.
Yeah, that's nice. And I think Churio's problem, and Kona, I just got to get to a break. I appreciate it. And happy Liberation Day. Thank you for explaining that, because I see you. He tweeted earlier today, Happy Liberation Day. And then he quote tweeted a couple minutes ago, are we feeling liberated? I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Yeah, that was my big takeaway from last night's game. And it's easy to have that takeaway when Bryce Turang has a couple hits and has a big night. But I just think you can get yourself in trouble futzing around so much. Like, we're going to put Turang at the 9, and then we're going to let Churio lead out. Just put Turang at the leadoff spot. Righties, lefties, just that should be his home most nights. And I think you just got to let him settle there and hope he can get in a groove and be, if not the player that we saw in the first half of the year last year, just in the aggregate last year, he was a very productive player for them. And I think you need to try to tap into that. And hopefully last night and today were the start of that. One more call, then we'll take a break. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, Tom from Oak Creek. How are you?
I'm going good, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I entirely agree with your Bryce Turang take. That was actually one of my takeaways from last night as well. And he's also a really good base stealer. He stole 50 bases last year.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe a guy who can run as well. And I like the Turang, Churio, Yelich, Contreras at the top of the lineup. I think one of the things with I think Darnell had brought up with Contreras is like his relative value is highest at catcher.
Yeah.
Like offensively, he's good, but for a catcher, he's great. If he's just a DH, then kind of his relative value goes down.
Sure.
But overall, was very happy with the Brewers bouncing back from obviously a horrific start. Kind of the anti-Packers started slow and bounced back, unlike our Packers. But
yeah,
hopefully the pitching settles in, especially as they get healthy. But with Turang, right now he might be the best player on the team.
Well,
Platinum defensive Gold Glover, plus at least to start. Granted, not very many people are doing well.
Not
but
a long list.
Has kind of the best numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an easy takeaway, and Tom, it was my takeaway too last night. It was the first thing I wrote down. I appreciate it. Like, Turang should be your leadoff hitter. It's an easy take to have when he has a couple hits like he did last night. But even today, on a day where no one could really hit, let's not pick on Bryce Turang. I know he had 6 at bats and only 1 hit. Like he was pretty impotent, but most of the lineup was pretty impotent. I just think you get yourself in trouble a little bit futzing around with the lineups too much. And I'm not Craig Counsell. I think lineups matter to a degree. Bryce Turang's your leadoff hitter. And on Contreras, yeah, I really like Eric Haas. Like, when you're 0-4 and you're struggling to string anything together, like, I'm not gonna say, well, you can't play Eric Haas. Well, if he's hitting, you can play anyone if they're hitting right now. And that was nice to see last night. But I think Contreras needs to play through this. I think his value is highest at catcher. You're absolutely right. I wish he would dial it in a little bit more at catcher sometimes. I think when he first got to Milwaukee, he had a ton to prove about his defensive ability, his pitch framing ability, and he was so good in year number 1 with the Brewers. I'm not going to say he's gotten lazy. I think that's probably become less of a focus because he's established himself, and I think he needs to reestablish himself a little bit. I'm not saying that he's bad. I'm not saying he's gotten lazy. That's too strong, but like 60% of that, like I think he needs to find center again a little bit and reestablish him as the defensive presence and the pitch framer and all the things that we saw in year one in Milwaukee. When I think he was eager to prove himself, we need to see a little bit of a return to that. And you're absolutely right. His value is highest at catcher, and you're not going to platoon him. You get Eric Haas opportunities when you can, but Contreras is your first, second best player on the team, depending on how Churio's going or depending on which version of Yelich we're getting. If Yelich is back, right, maybe that might change some things. Let's take a break. 3 minutes. I'll get to some texts. We'll continue to talk Brewers. I have some great audio from the postgame from Vinny Rottino and others as well, talking about the bunt at the end. And bunt, yeah, do we probably got to talk about bunting? I probably got to extol the virtues of bunting tonight, which isn't my favorite thing to do, but I'll do it. We'll do that next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
He's very passionate about how much the bunt makes this team go at the right time. Unlike when Craig Counsell was here and Murph was his bench coach for a long time, it's amazing how we've seen that go from I'm not going to bunt to darn right I'm going to bunt if the situation's right.
Well, it doesn't make sense, when you look at the analytics and the math behind bunting. And that's why Counsell, he was all about that side of things, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's a tool, and Murphy knows it's a tool to use, and it's for sure helpful. But Murphy also knows the human side of it, and that's exactly what he said right there. He said, hey, look, if there's a guy like Bryce Harang who can bunt and put it in a position like he did right there in the bottom of the 11th inning, but then also has the ability to run like he can run, it puts a ton of trepidation in the defense for the pitcher. And that's the human side of it. And that's why he calls for bunts, especially with guys like Bryce Harang, who is going to get the job done even after an 0 for 5, even after 3 punch-outs like he mentioned.
Vinny Rottino and Craig Kashan after the game on the FanDuel Sports Network. I'm not a big bunt guy. I think bunting has a place. We can talk about that in a minute. So I don't cut that audio and play it on the show to be like, they're right. Bunting, you got to bunt more. The bunting is great for this reason, that reason. I wouldn't be peacocking about bunting, although it was the defining play of the game. It's the reason they were able to win an extras 3-2. I'm mostly indifferent on bunting. I think sometimes it's good, sometimes it's kind of dumb. The reason why I love that soundbite is Vinny's like, well, with the last guy, Craig Counsell, he'd never do that. I'm like, well, okay. So that's audio that I'm going to play naturally. Come on.
But Murphy also knows the human side of it, and that's exactly what he said right there. He said, hey, look, if there's a guy like Bryce Harang who can bunt and put it in a position like he did right there in the bottom of the 11th inning, but then also has the ability to run like he can run, it puts a ton of trepidation in the defense for the pitcher. And that's the human side of it. And that's why he calls for bunts, especially with guys like Bryce Harang.
And I think the pressure on the defense, the pressure on the pitcher, that's a real thing. I think you can take it too far. And I think an example of how this Murphy team sometimes takes the idea of bunting or small ball a little bit too far is in the 7th inning, right? Okay, so Garrett Mitchell walks to start the game or start the inning, and then Ortiz doubles off the wall in right field. So you have runners on second and third with nobody out. And I tweeted about this at the time at Wisco Grant. I think sometimes the Pat Murphy Brewers specifically, and I don't really remember this as something that I would notice with Counsell's Brewers, and maybe it's just a couple years ago now, so it's out of my mind. This offense and their inclination at times to play small ball or to consider bunting or moving runners over really feel like they shrink the field. Like Terang grounded out to shortstop in that instance, didn't move anyone over, didn't get anyone in. Churio grounds a fielder's choice to third, right? Mitchell was thrown out at home on that play. So again, kind of and I saw Kurt tweeting about this, kind of conflicting strategies there. Like, are you putting the contact play on? Or are you not putting the contact play on? If you're going to put the contact play on, you put it on with nobody out just as much as you would with one, because put it this way, if Garrett Mitchell tries to come home on that Terang chopper and is thrown out, okay, well, you have runners at first and third, and on another ground ball, you have an opportunity to try again with a runner at third. It's not like you're completely porked. So a little bit of a contradiction in strategies there. And Pat Murphy said as much after the game. He's like, yeah, I would have liked to see Garrett go there. He went back to the old, I wish I could tase guys during the game. And I'll play you some of that audio later on in the show because I cut Murphy's presser because I thought that comment was germane. I thought it was important, right? But the 7th inning, when you start it's a tie game, it's 1-1, and you have runners on second and third with nobody out. I think this Brewers team and their small ball inclination at times, and they can crank homers too. Like I think last year, a little bit of revisionist history with how that team is described. Well, they stole bases and they bunted. Yeah, well, they did. They also had Willie Adames, who had 35 homers, and Rhys Hoskins, who had 30 homers, and Churio, who was a 2020 player. Like they cranked it too. Small ball was a part of it, and it's a fun part. It's an entertaining part. Variety's the spice of life, to be certain. But sometimes I think they get a little too bogged down in it. You have runners on second and third, and it feels like the way they play offense shrinks the field. Like they make the park feel so small. And when you can execute well and everyone's on the same page, it can work. And you only need one run, it can work. I just think the strategy, the philosophy wasn't quite clear with Garrett Mitchell or wasn't executed well with Garrett Mitchell. So that 7th inning, and then Yelich pinch hits and strikes out for the third and final out. Yelich actually doesn't pinch hit a whole lot, mostly because he plays, and he's not available to pinch hit very often. They talked about that in the broadcast. But I think in that inning, if you're going to play small ball, you kind of need to go all in. Like somebody needs to drop down a bunt, or the contact play, for example, needs to be on with nobody out. Yes, even with nobody out, because if it doesn't work, you're fine. You got runners on the corner with one out. You're not really all that worse for wear, especially with Churio at the plate, because the chances of him getting doubled up aren't zero, but they're low. It's not like you got Rhys Hoskins or William Contreras, who can sometimes be a ground ball double play machine. If you're going to play small ball, because sometimes I think the Pat Murphy Brewers specifically get kind of caught in this middle ground where it's like, well, if you have a chance to swing away, you can do it. If you have a chance to bunt, you do it. And what happens is you just shrink the field. And it feels so small, and it feels like the ball's never even going to clear the gravel. But I'm not anti-bunt all the time. I think it has its merits, and it certainly has its entertainment value. And at the end of the day, like, I'm watching to be entertained, which other than Freddie Peralta was why I was so annoyed during most of the game today. I tweeted, and it was emotional, whatever, I'll admit to it. But I tweeted in the 10th when the Brewers had, was it runners? I think the bases were loaded with nobody out after they had tied it up, and they failed to get the winning run home. And I tweeted, this is an hour ago, I absolutely despise this Brewers team. Let me be crabby on the internet. That's what the internet's for. And I got buddies in a group chat who are like, Grant, you're so whiny. You're so negative. It's like, hey, guys, I'm watching the game, okay? I'm the sad sap who has to sit here and watch this game on my laptop at work. Don't judge me for getting angry when you're getting score updates on your phone, right? When you're checking the box score. Like, sit down and watch the thing and then tell me, like, I'm not allowed to be frustrated when they load the bases in the 10th inning and they can't get the run home, right? So it's an entertainment product at the end of the day. It certainly becomes an entertainment product or part of an entertainment product on a sports talk show. And I think there are times where a bunt is really fun. One of my favorite plays of the Brewers season last year was that drag bunt that Christian Yelich dropped down against the Twins at Target Field. That's fun. You don't see that coming. That's a surprise. That's a splash of spice in the punch bowl. Like, I don't know that you can build a whole offense around it. Well, I know you can't build a whole offense around it, despite a lot of people kind of thinking, again, that's what the Brewers were last year. They weren't. It was a part of it. It was a spice. It was a garnish. It wasn't the whole thing. And it can be a really fun garnish from time to time. But I am not someone who thinks that the team should bunt all the time. And I think they get in their own heads about that, and they shrink the field. And then it feels like, oh my God, can we ever hit a ball out of the infield? Rick from Spencer says, you're going to Iceland this week? Also, when Ebo hosts the show, you should do the first hour or 90 minutes and let Kate finish the show. I think she's ready. You know what's funny is Kate's going to take my job producing Bill. She's really friggin' good at it. The last time she filled in, it's when I was in Mexico for that wedding. And I got a text from a host who I know pretty well who actually works on another station, not in Milwaukee, but saw Bill's live stream. She's like, he must have listened to a little bit because Kate plays volleyball and basketball at Edgewood, like a sporting background. Like, Kate's great at this. And he said, you guys got an athlete? You got a basketball player to produce Bill? Like, that rules. I'm like, I know, it's great. No, Kate's awesome. And she'll be great the next couple of days and next week, kind of helping out with Bill's show. I don't know if she'll be on in the evening. She's more than welcome to. If she wants to host or if she wants to co-host, she's absolutely more than welcome. Cone says, also, Woody has a chance to be in Nashville on rehab starts the end of this weekend. Very, very good sign. Fingers crossed he stays on track. Yeah, every Woodruff update has been positive. There have been no setbacks. Knock on wood. There have been no injuries or anything like that. Knock on wood. I don't need Woodruff back next week, but if they can get Quintana back soon, if they can get Tobias Myers back soon, Nick Mears back, Ashby, whatever, I'd love to get him back. It hasn't really been a consistent experience at any point other than a stretch at the end of last year with Ashby. So maybe I should be a little bit more forgiving to the guy because I do love him and I want to see him succeed. But if they can get these other guys back and keep Woodruff kind of building up behind the scenes, they could really have a nice plethora of pitchers. Right now, they're just doing a lot of waiting for those pitchers who are injured. So you're exactly right, Cone. We should probably mention that Brandon Woodruff is working his way back too. Who knows with DL Hall? That's another, I don't even know. And at some point tonight, or maybe when I'm back next week, I want to talk about DL Hall because I think he is a symptom. He is a little piece of a bigger problem that the Brewers are experiencing between last year and this year, but probably not for tonight as we're reacting to these two games. But that's a conversation that we can have at a later date. 608-321-1670. We'll take a call, then we'll take a break. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
So are we so back now?
We might be, Corey.
So over on Monday.
We might be. Well, here's the thing, and this is going to sound stupid. 2-5 is immeasurably better than, or 2-4 is immeasurably better than 1-5. Being 1-5 after you get that performance of Freddie Peralta today would have been a kick in the bags.
It would have been a kick in the you-know-where for sure. And we could really talk ourselves into it. It could theoretically be 3-3 if they had come through it in New York against our nemesis, that SOB that killed Bob Uecker with his bum tipping pitches. You know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly who you're talking about. Yep.
He doesn't even deserve his name to be mentioned. But you know what I'm saying. So we could talk ourselves into like, this is a 500 team theoretically. So yeah, hey, we are so back. So isn't it fun about baseball? One day you're like, man, I effing hate this team. Next day you're like, hey, they might actually be doing something. So
well, that's how it's supposed to work. That's how fandom is supposed
exactly
to work.
it.
I am a
Iceland,
fan.
huh?
I will always cheer for them. I will support them. That doesn't mean I have to like them at every given moment in time. You know what I mean?
I'm the same way. So off to Iceland for a week or 10 days, or how long you go?
Oh, well, not 10 to 10 days. That sounds like an eternity. The flight leaves tomorrow. For all of you who I'm sure are fascinated with this subject matter, our flight leaves at like 7:30 tomorrow night, and it's a 6-hour flight, and it's a 6-hour time change. So we land at like 7 in the morning, and then back next Wednesday.
Stay up all day, or try to get a nap in the morning and go.
Well, I'm going to try to sleep on the plane. I was reading a blog last night. By the way, here's a great grab-ass sports talk radio topic. If anyone has tips on how to sleep on a plane, and by the way, keep your smart-ass comments about just take a big gummy, just drink a bottle of like yeah, I could do that. I'm not going to sleep for the full 6 hours, but if I could get 2 to 3 hours in, that could get me through tomorrow. That could get me to Thursday night, and hopefully get me as close to on track for the time change as possible. You know what I mean?
You'll probably laugh at this, but try doing some meditation. Get a meditation app, and it'll put you in a state of like different, like, so probably sound like Evo talking a little bit, but like it'll put your electrical synapses in a different state, and you like concentrate. It's pretty wild. You start like concentrating on one thing.
Do you meditate, Corey?
Yeah, from time to time, like to help me sleep.
So
like,
what do you say in your head if you're sitting there quietly? Do you have a mantra? Do you speak, or do you just think?
People probably kind of snicker at this, but my wife and I, we both got Peloton. So like on the Peloton app, like, there's all these meditation classes, and there's like sleep meditation and like meditation to get you like kind of going and stuff like that, calming meditation, all these other things. So there's someone actually like guiding you through it is actually the most helpful, because otherwise your mind will start kind of drifting and wandering, and that's the last thing you want, obviously. So like if you start like concentrating on your breathing and like focusing on like one object and like how you're rhythmically breathing, it'll get you to sleep. Like it's how soldiers kind of do it in a war zone. They start thinking about like I can't remember what the technique is, but there's a way like these guys can fall asleep even though there's like all this chaos around them, even to get, like you said, like an hour or so of sleep, and it'll make you feel better. So that's something I recommend. I haven't tried it myself yet, and I know everybody will say like I'll take an Ambien or whatever. Like, I mean, you know, take a gummy, blah blah blah. But we're doing a couple of shooters of like, so get some good bourbon while you're on there, and so you're like, oh, I'm going to take a nice little nap now. You never really know, like a Thanksgiving meal type deal.
Oh yeah, I could just eat turkey and mashed potatoes. That's good advice. Maybe here's what I'm hearing, Corey, and thanks for the call. I shouldn't watch the Brewers. That's not what I should do on the plane. I'm going to bring some slippers though. I think that'll help. I got a neck pillow. I got noise canceling headphones. God, cheat code on a plane. You don't realize how loud a plane is until you ride a plane with noise canceling headphones. I'll never go back. Which, it's loud. There's jet engines on the other side of the wall. Obviously, it's loud. So I guess we can continue to talk about this. I got some Pat Murphy comments from after the game that are great. Oh, yeah, and by the way, Jesse Temple going to be here at 5:30. We talked about earlier, because I recorded with Jesse ahead of time, we talked about the free tag transfer, what he's seeing at spring ball, and then a very interesting story he wrote about a high-level O-line recruit from Racine who is going to Minnesota to play for PJ Fleck and was not exactly, I guess, soft-spoken about the reason why. So we'll talk about that in hour number 2. A lot of good stuff yet to come on the Wisco Sports Show.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I can't sleep on the plane. Even with first class, I can't sleep on an airplane. I don't know about you guys. My friend's like, why can't you sleep on an airplane? He acts like I'm crazy. He's like, why don't you just go to sleep? I'm like, I can't. And he's like, why? I'm like, is that hard to understand? That's not a normal sleeping situation. That's why. Like, if you went home tonight and you went to bed and there was a jet engine idling outside of your bedroom window, don't you think you might be like, I'm going to have trouble sleeping tonight because of the jet engine outside of my bedroom window? And then also somebody replaced your bed with a chair. And there was 71 strangers in your bedroom with you. And then someone woke you up in the middle of the night to offer you a Coke. That's what they do on airplanes. Like, I know you're trying to sleep, but do you want a Coke right now? I'm like, yeah, give me a Coke. I like to break up my sleep with a can of Coke. That's how I sleep at home. I sleep for 4 hours. I wake up, I drink a can of Coke. Kind of spice up my dreams a little bit. Sometimes I boil cola right before bed. A little sleepy time Pepsi.
I don't know why that just came back into my brain. That's a funny bit. Joe List, very funny comedian, while we're talking about sleeping on pains. Not to be confused with Joe Pass, the guitar player, or Joe Dart, the bass player, Joe List. Something about the name Joe with a one-syllable last name. Just clicks. I don't know what it is. Rock and Rick. Oh, this is a good suggestion. This is why I was hesitant to bring this up, but it's actually kind of a funny topic while we also discuss the Brewers. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. It's not going to turn into the sleeping on an airplane show. Rock and Rick says, when you close your eyes, your mind is staring. It's funny, Rock and Rick, because I know you, and you do not strike me as someone who's deeply meditative, yoga doer, affirmations. Rock and Rick, I know you. You're an outdoorsman. You wear camo. You like being outside. So this is just funny coming from you, Rock and Rick. It says, when you close your eyes, your mind is staring at an empty black chalkboard. Your breaths are deep, ... 4 seconds in, ... 6 seconds out, ... Count it off in your mind. That's staring at the empty board. It's just funny knowing that text came from you, Rock and Rick, and the way that you wrote that. You wrote that like you would say it if you were leading a meditation. And then you also write, this is a great idea. If you have earplugs, play white noise like a babbling brook. Yeah, I'm trying to fall asleep, not piss my pants in Delta economy. But I'm going to try. I'm going to bring my slippers. Maybe I'll stop at Walgreens tonight. It's just a couple blocks away from my apartment. If you're familiar with Heartland, where I live, it's right on the corner of Happy and Healthy. See what kind of melatonin gummies I can buy. I do want to hear a little bit from Pat Murphy because he talks about that sequence that I was referencing in the 7th inning, where I think the Brewers, you can make some real hay with small ball, and it's a great weapon to have in your pocket if you only need a run or if you're trying to steal a one-run game. And the Brewers were quite good, I think, in one-run games last year. Feels like they were. I don't know. I feel like if you ask other teams, certainly ask a Reds fan, like, all you guys do is win one-run games. But if you only need one run and you need to secure a win, especially in extra innings, great skill. Sometimes I think the Brewers can get in their head a little bit too much about small ball. The 7th inning is an example. They started the inning with, well, they didn't start the inning, but the inning progressed to such a point where there was a runner on second, a runner on third, and nobody out. It was a walk and a double. I think a walk from would have been Churio and then Ortiz. It doesn't matter. So runners on second and third, and I think the Brewers offensively, they're like, well, we just got to get one run in, and you can feel the field shrinking. They get in their head a little bit. They shrink the field down. And it's difficult to then blow the field back up once you get in that mindset of, well, we just need to plate one run via a bunt or a ground or sac fly. It's difficult then to open the thing back up, and I think you experienced that with the Brewers, but I think they poorly executed small ball, if that's what you want to reduce it to in the 7th inning. Because if they were going to put the contact play on, which they did with 1 out, they should have done it with 0 outs. And I think Murphy talked about that in the presser. It's just a couple minutes of Murph after the game. Let's listen to this.
Sense do you have on whether or not this could pose?
You know what I just realized? That's Mark Murphy. I was like, why is this 16 minutes long? I guess Murphy went for a while. No. That is Mark Murphy. Oh God, did I label him the same thing? This is going to be this is a problem. Shoot. Oh, great. Pat Murphy. Is this it right here? This has got to be it, right? This is a classic radio producer spoof. Here it is. Okay. This one's only 5 minutes. I was like, why are there birds in the background? Mark Murphy spoke at the owner meeting saying, I'll actually play you a clip from that about the tush push because it's been tabled. And that's something that I think is worth talking about because I think this is the biggest story in the NFL and the owners meetings. Here is Pat Murphy, the Murphy that we're actually looking for.
Okay. What we got?
Murph, what did you say to Terang before that last at bat?
How did you know I talked to him?
I think they showed you talking to him.
Oh. The honest truth. You want that?
Great.
I said, it's a good idea to put a bunt down the first base line right here. You'll win the game. I said, okay. So it's going to be a breaking ball. Okay.
That's kind of badass, actually. He said that.
That's simple.
Is there such thing as a better bunt than what he executed?
Kid strikes out 3 times and then comes and does that. I mean, You know what I mean? Like he wasn't having his best game. He's been swinging the bat great for us. He just stayed with it. That's relentless. The whole team. We had a lot of things. Sal lining into that ball there. I mean, just a lot of things, look like, what kind of snake bit. But they stayed after it. And that's what I'm proud of.
Was it extra challenging?
And I think, and I'll pause it right there for a sec. I think a big reason why players work with Murphy, and I'm not going to say in a way that they didn't work with Counsell, but you just hear him talk about, look, that kid had 2 strikeouts, couldn't find anything at the plate, and then the way that he rolled in extra innings and made the game-winning play. Like, we complain. I don't complain as much, but I know a lot of you do. Folks complain about Matt LaFleur, and we look across the border around the division. We're like, man, why can't we get a guy like Dan Campbell? We have Dan Campbell. We have the Dan Campbell of baseball, and it's Pat Murphy. So just enjoy that. Appreciate that.
Was it extra challenging considering everyone in the ballpark probably knows he's going to consider at the very least bunting there? Like, do you think that makes it more difficult to get a bunt down?
It does, except if you put a bunt like that down, there's nobody in the world that can defend anything about it, And bunting is a threat. When you have the threat to bunt, it causes trepidation in the defense because you can't play any closer than they played. And if you can execute that thing, it causes havoc.
Pretty sure.
That's why, by the way, I like the drag bunt down the first baseline. I don't always love bunting, but if you're going to do it, that's the way that I like to do it. And that's why I love when Yelich does this, because he's so freaking good at it. It was one of my favorite plays of the year last year, was that bunt against the Twins.
That ace role today, just kind of
my God,
exactly what you need.
He was as good as I've seen him in I don't know how many years, but that's a good baseball team over there. That team's playoff bound baseball team. They have great pitching. They have what it takes. They've put together it. They got a bunch of guys. They got maybe the top player in baseball and Bobby Witt Jr. And they play right. That's a really good team, and that's why I'm so excited, because we battled. That's how we have to be. We have to battle and be relentless and never give in. And our pitching staff. I mean, Freddie he set the tone for everybody else. Even though we struck out 16 times, we left 14 guys on base. That's not ideal,
Even though we love, and this is why, there's not many coaches, or not all coaches can do this. Pat Murphy pretty openly talks about what his team did poorly or what individuals did poorly. And you'll hear this from coaches, but that mutual respect and that competitiveness and that love is there. Like, he can kind of just say, yeah, my guy sucked, or this guy had a bad day.
But we came out on top because of that resiliency. But Freddie showed it from the get-go. He's like, here, I'm here. And just his first 2 outings this year, you're looking at a guy that,
So a little bit of a sample of initial reactions. There's one more thing from this presser that I want to play, and I'll find it during the break, about that sequence in the 7th. And he talks about the contact play and the read from Garrett Mitchell. I think that's some heady baseball conversation that we should partake in. But Kurt Hogue, I'll read you this tweet from 2 hours ago. What an outing from Freddie Peralta if he's done. That's 8 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, 8 strikeouts without a walk, 19 whiffs in total. With 7 whiffs on 7 curveball swings, I believe he's the first in the StatCast era with 100% whiff rate on a single pitch, minimum 5 swings. You could make the argument that's one of Freddie's best starts ever. I don't know how high. I don't have the baseball brain for it, but I saw some Brewers scribes making that point today, and I think it's a very good one. He was absolutely dominant. We'll wrap up hour number 1 of the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
The Wisco Sports Show, a couple minutes here. We got a break and get an update from Zach at 5 o'clock. Jesse Temple in about a half hour. It's a really good Badgers conversation. Always love connecting with Jesse. Freddie Peralta, brilliant today. The offense left a lot to be desired. And look, the other team, their pitchers get paid too, et cetera, et cetera. That's baseball, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's the kind of day that it was. It was both an awe-inspiring watch this afternoon to see what Freddie Peralta did, but also a game that kind of made me want to pull my hair out, because when you get 8 innings out of Freddie Peralta, it's like, okay, great. You cover 1 inning or whatever they got, 7, or I think they covered 7 with Freddie. Whatever it turned out to be, it doesn't matter. You got more than you would expect from Freddie Peralta. You went 8 on only 97 pitches too. So you use one guy, ideally your closer, to close the game, and then you're done, and you don't have to use the rest of your bullpen. But instead, they had to use McGill, Uribe, Koenig. It's like, I would have liked to be able to save 2 of those guys. I shouldn't complain. I'm nitpicking. That's kind of what sports talk radio is for, so I'm not going to feel too bad about it. I'm not going to feel, too bent out of shape about it and guilty about it. But it was a frustrating watch. A lot of strikeouts, a lot of non-competitive at-bats. And then it really kind of bogged down in the 7th when the Brewers had a runner on second and third with nobody out, and I think they got tight. And that small ball thing was all in the back of their minds, which is fine. But if you're going to play small ball, you got to execute small ball. You got to put the contact play on with nobody out. Or you got to swing away. But what you can't do is get caught in the middle, because that's going to benefit nobody, right? Like, let's have a clear-cut identity and clear-cut idea of what particular we're going to try to do. And I'll play you Murphy's comment. He did about 2 minutes on 2 instances where Garrett Mitchell frustrated him today. He said, I wish I get 2 tases a game. I would have tased Garrett Mitchell twice. One for his approach at the plate in an at-bat later in the game. And then in the 7th, when he froze at third base, it was a tough ball to read, and Murphy gives him credit for that. But this is also what makes Murphy such an interesting manager is, there's such a connection. There's such a bond, I think, between him and his players and a respect, kind of Dan Campbell-ish, that he can also be at the podium and be like, yeah, this guy struck out 5 times a day. He'll speak very openly about his players' struggles as well as their successes, which I think is cool. We'll get an update from Zach hour 2 next. We'll start with some Murphy commentary, a Packers story today from league meetings, owners meetings, and then Jesse Temple, loaded second hour.
On the white picket fence and boardwalk of the house at the edge of town.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, the Brewers got a walk-off bunt from Bryce Terang to beat Kansas City 3-2 this afternoon in 11 innings. Milwaukee had scored a run in the 10th and loaded the bases, but couldn't get another run across after Jared Koenig threw up a scoreless top of the 11th. Oliver Dunn got into scoring position before Terang dropped down the bunt to bring him home and set off a wild celebration at American Family Field. Milwaukee was in that position because of a strong effort from Freddie Peralta and a couple of big hits from Jackson Churio. Peralta went 8 innings, allowed just 1 run on 2 hits and struck out 8. Matched the longest start of his career. Just the second time he's gone 8 innings. Churio hit his first home run of the year in the first inning and then was the guy who drove in the game-time run in the 10th to send the game to the 11th. The win allowed the Crew to take 2 of 3 from Kansas City and they earned the series win. After allowing 47 runs in the first 4 games, Brewers gave up just 2 in their last 2. They will welcome the Reds tomorrow for the start of a 4-game weekend series at American Family Field.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Farmers deal with a lot, including long days, stress, and fatigue. This is your reminder to take breaks, stretch, have a snack, and hydrate your body. Avoid farm accidents by keeping yourself healthy. Visit ruralmutual.com to learn how Rural Mutual supports Wisconsin farmers and prioritize safety on the farm.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the Bucks are headed to Philly. It's where they're going to take on the 76ers tomorrow. Milwaukee would be the number 6 seed in the playoffs if they started today. Just 7 games left here in the regular season. Meanwhile, Wisconsin forward Chris Hodges is in the transfer portal. Rarely played the last 4 seasons. He's the 3rd Badger player to enter the portal. NFL draft in Green Bay getting going 3 weeks from tomorrow. And Wisconsin getting back on the field for practice number 6 of spring tomorrow morning in Madison. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heilprin.
He's very passionate about how much the bunt makes this team go at the right time. Unlike when Craig Counsell was here and Murph was his bench coach for a long time, it's amazing how we've seen that go from I'm not going to bunt to darn right I'm going to bunt if the situation's right.
Well, it doesn't make sense, when you look at the analytics and the math behind bunting. And that's why Counsell, he was all about that side of things, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's a tool, and Murphy knows it's a tool to use, and it's for sure helpful. But Murphy also knows the human side of it, and that's exactly what he said right there. He said, hey, look, if there's a guy like Bryce Terang who can bunt and put it in a position like he did right there in the bottom of the 11th inning, but then also has the ability to run like he can run, it puts a ton of trepidation in the defense for the pitcher. And that's the human side of it. And that's why he calls for bunts, especially with guys like Bryce Terang, who is going to get the job done, even after an 0 for 5, even after 3 punch-outs like he mentioned.
And Terang does square, gets a bunt down. Here comes Ted. He scores!
A squeeze bunt walk-off for Bryce Terang. This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Now, I'm not in the never bunt crowd. I think in most circumstances, I prefer to avoid bunting. But I texted the Brewers group chat that I'm in right before the show started. It's like, damn it, do I have to extol the virtues of bunting to start the show? Do that. I don't want to do that. But I tell you what, it is fun. It adds a good entertainment value to the show and to the experience of watching baseball. It's fun when Yelich out of nowhere sees something and drops down a drag bunt, like a heady, well-executed, specific baseball play. Like, yeah, that's fun. I just don't know if I want it baked largely into the strategy of most of my games, but it felt like honestly, you know what? I thought the Brewers were going to win it in 10, and I thought they were going to win it on a walk from Vinny Capra. I'm like, honestly, Vinny, I think the count went full. I'm like, honestly, flip a coin. Just flip a coin, take a pitch, and hope that he misses or hope that you get a call. Because the feeling that he was going to elevate a ball out of the infield or sneak it through the infield, like it just felt so low. I'm just like, I would rather bet on trying to get a walk. Or put it this way. This game was always going to end unconventionally if the Brewers were going to win, because it felt like the field had shifted so small And the offense was so quiet. It's like no one was just going to get up there and swing a nice double into the gap for the win. Like it just wasn't going to happen. It was going to need to be something painful, a grinded out bases loaded walk, a balk, or a well-executed bunt from Bryce Terang. So I'm not going to hate. Jesse Temple coming up at 5:30. I have a little bit of news to pass along from the NFL owners meetings. Kaylin Kaler was on Bill's show earlier today from ESPN. She's been on the show before. She's been all over the tush push reporting and all of the different players and individuals involved and the perspectives. Very interesting. She was on in hour number 2. I would highly recommend you go listen to that. 11:30, yeah, hour number 2. And I'll play you a comment from Mark Murphy coming up. This is Pat Murphy after the game talking about 2 plays where he wasn't exactly thrilled with Garrett Mitchell.
Well, Garrett, if I have this theory in baseball, if Manfred would do it, that everybody gets 2 tases a game. Every manager gets 2 tases a game. And I would have used one on Garrett when he didn't get the bunt down the first 2 strikes. So he wouldn't have got the chance to bounce back. But again, he bounced back with 2 strikes and got it done. And then Ortiz's bat was just terrific. I mean, just to work that walk in that situation is it's huge. And it showed me a lot because he hasn't been swinging the bat the way he wants to, although he had a good game today. Hopefully that helps his confidence. We're still a young team, guys. Let's be honest. Terang, Churio, Collins, Frelick, Capra, Mitchell, Ortiz, those are young, experienced players. Dunn's on the bench, young. Those are inexperienced position players. And yeah, I guess some of them are growing out of that.
Murph, would Mitchell have got a tase in the 7th?
Yeah. Yeah, I would use both tays on him today. It's a tough read. With 2nd and 3rd, no outs, you usually don't go on contact. You read the high chopper. So we called read the high chopper. And I felt like it was a high chopper. And with Bobby Witt handling the ball, chances are he could have been out. But because Terang's such a good runner, you can get him to 2nd. You know what I mean? If you're in a rundown, whatever, you can get him to 2nd. And you're in the same situation. So it pays in that situation to read the chop. He didn't read it.
So the contact play is always controversial because outs on the base path always feel more painful than a strikeout or a fly ball. Feels like, well, why did you run there? Why did you send the right? It feels like there's been some mistake made instead of a batter just not getting the job done. So in the 7th, right, that ball's put in play and the runners at 2nd and 3rd freeze. The ball goes to 1st and it's fielder's choice. And I saw Kurt tweet, yet another win for my always run the contact play take. I'm like, okay, I know what Kurt's saying, but I think he's going to take some heat for this. This is what he then laid out in a later tweet, and I completely agree. I'm going to read you directly from the book of Hogue. If Mitchell runs on contact on Terang's high chopper, he's probably safe. If not, you have the go-ahead run on 3rd with the same number of outs. If Mitchell doesn't run on the Churio ball, you still have the go-ahead run on 3rd and the same number of outs. You know what I mean? Like, you're not giving up much other than an out. You're already giving up the out anyways. You're giving up potentially, the runner at 2nd. But, or I guess the runner at 2nd would shift to 3rd. So you have 1 fewer runners in scoring position. But at that moment in time, you just needed the 1 run to break the seal and to take a 2-1 lead. The offense was so frozen there, really for the whole game, outside of Jackson Churio's solo shot. And thank God for that solo shot. Otherwise, they'd probably lose today. 608-321-1670 if you would like to join the show to talk Brewers. I have a Packers comment for you from Mark Murphy in a little bit too, or anything Badgers related, because Jesse Temple's coming up. It's all on the board. We're very fluid. We can bounce from topic to topic on the show. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We've also been discussing on the text line, I see, the best ways to sleep on an airplane. Bobby in Menominee says, it's easier to sleep on a plane than a car. Don't fall down any lava tubes or you might see some S. I don't know that is going over my head. I'm not sure it is easier to sleep on a plane than it is in a car. You have more room in a car, depending on how many people are in the car and what car. The plane seats are just so upright. Like, where's my head supposed to go? To the side? Front? Just back? I don't like leaning back because then my neck sticks out and I feel like someone's going to come punch me in the apples. I don't like being exposed. I don't like my neck, my Adam's apple being exposed. I feel like when I'm sleeping, someone's going to come throat punch me. It's just a weird, I can't close my eyes and relax knowing that I'm just out there exposed. Someone's going to come hit me with a a spoon or something. I don't know why that's a fear. It's never happened to me. It's just a very sensitive part of the body. I don't want it out and about. I don't want it sticking out like that. That's just a me thing, though. That's very small. And Nick says, Grant, how do you feel about the Brewers matchup against the Reds tomorrow? I think they're getting the Reds at the right time because the Reds have lost now a couple games, lots of errors, lots of sloppy play. And I feel like Terry Francona is eventually going to curb that sloppy play. But if they get him early before Terry Francona gets his arm around the thing, then you might be able to bank some wins. So I actually feel great about their chances against the Reds. And Nestor Cortez, silver lining, cannot possibly be as bad as he was in Saturday's game against the Yankees. Probably. 608-321-1670. Let's take a call. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is Adam calling from Eau Claire.
What's going on, Adam? Thanks for listening up in Eau Claire.
Yeah, just want to say thank you for your threat yesterday talking about the draft. If the Brewers couldn't have a good starting pitching, and now the last two games, everything's looked quite good.
Yeah.
Whatever you did was working.
Well, and I'm scared that I've never had to talk about a bad Brewers team on this show. It's the 7th year that we've been on, and every single Brewers team has been good. We've had something to talk about all summer, and I can't do it. I can't be talking all draft every single day. I'm not equipped for that, Adam.
Yeah, it's been nice to watch, and yeah, good thing that we had that Cheerio home run to start out with, and then a couple chances next to us, but now 2-4 doesn't sound so bad compared to 0-4.
Yeah, it's certainly better than 1-5. I don't know why that seems like it's very different, but it feels very different. You know what I mean?
It does. Yeah.
It does. I appreciate it. Thanks for the call, Adam. And talk Brewers anytime. Call back. Just treading water while we wait for some players to get back. And between Aaron Ashby and DL Hall and others, it just seems like, man, I don't know, Woodruff and Quintana and Tobias Myers. Can you imagine where they would be without Quintana? Like, thank God they have him coming back, even if he doesn't pitch like an ace. Like, I'd be a lot more concerned about this pitching group, this pitching room, if Quintana wasn't also coming back. I just like that other option. Let's take another call. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is Louie in Eau Claire.
What's up, Louie?
Hi, Grant. 2-4, 6, or the first week of the season. It's much too early to make any big conclusions here. But one thing I was kind of thinking before the season, and I think it's carried over a little bit, there was a lot of outliers last year for the Brewers that were pretty positive that people are going to regress. People and stats are going to regress to the mean. I mean, the Brewers had a bunch of opportunities to score runs today, and then last year they had a really high batting average with runners in scoring position. Used to say that, like, William Contreras, that may have been his best year ever last year. I know he's pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he'll get better, but there's also a chance that was his best year. Same deal with Hudson and Koenig.
Yep.
And even
it's probably more likely with relievers, because relievers are generally so much more fluky than position players.
Exactly. And even, I know Adames isn't even on the team anymore. He had 5 years worth of 3-run home runs in one season. So even if that same team had came back exactly intact, even with Devin Williams, they're probably not going to win as many games just because there was a bunch of outlying things. Now, my hope is that it's not that, and it's even closer to average. But what if it's just the opposite, and there's a bunch of outliers in a negative way this season? Things have a way of leveling out that way. I hope not, but that's kind of my thought.
Though there absolutely could be. I'm less worried about that with Contreras. Thanks, Louie. And I'm generally less worried about that with position players. Doesn't mean it can't happen. It doesn't mean that a position player can't be unbelievable one year and kind of crummy the next. There's natural variance with position players and with hitters, and look at anybody's Baseball Reference page and you'll see that. I think relievers are kind of in a class of their own in terms of flukiness. I mean, look at Colin Ray. You know what I mean? He goes in the span of one season, goes from being a true ace who's pitching a lot of innings to dude can't get anybody out. I mean, so pitching, I think you're just experiencing more variance, and I certainly believe that of relievers, especially the way the Brewers build out their bullpen. It's the way they should build out the bullpen based on how they build their team and how they have to build their team because of their budget. But you can't count on Jared Koenig to be the guy that he was last year for 4 or 5 years. Like, it's probably not in the cards. I mean, he's probably not in the cards for a lot of these relievers. And there's probably going to be relievers this year where, like, this guy pitching at a high level, you know, it's very infrequently the guys you always expect, especially with relievers. And that's why closer is such a tricky business. If I ran a team, and it'd be really difficult to do because Like if I'm the best reliever on the team, I want to close always, But if a team like the Brewers, like if teams were really smart, they would change closers based on who's hot. You know what I mean? It's like a goalie in the NHL. Like, yeah, some are better. Like I think Devin Williams is better than most. I think Emmanuel Clase is better than most. But both of them went ice cold at the exact wrong time last year. You know what I mean? But teams are so rigid. You saw this with Jeremy Jefferson in 2018. Like if they had let Hader close or if they had let Knebel close in 18 and move Jefferson to a different role, maybe they win that series against the Dodgers. Or last year, like the way that McGill was throwing down the stretch versus how Williams is throwing, like if you swap them late in the year, the Brewers probably beat the Mets. I'm pretty confident that they do. But that's difficult because then you're keeping all of your relievers in limbo and you're hurting the earning ability of probably your most elite reliever. Like Devin Williams, like Pat Murphy and the Brewers can't go to Devin Williams in September and be like, hey, you've been a great closer, but your stuff's kind of falling off. Like, we're going to swap you out. All right, McGill, you're up. But if teams were smart and if you weren't dealing with human beings with egos and with contracts, that's how you do it because that's smart. Like there are some goalies in hockey who are absolutely unbelievable. And like Mariano Rivera, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, he was great throughout. Other than that, it's a lot of Devin Williams, Josh Haders, Jeremy Jeffersons, Emmanuel Clase, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Who it's like, yeah, they're very good, but they're liable for a bad month or a bad week, just like anybody else. But because of their position as a closer, they're going to keep getting opportunities in that spot, whereas other players might be benched or platooned or something else. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this? Great call. Excellent. Best call of the show so far. Appreciate it. Thank you for the time. You know the number. Call me back. All right, let's take a 3-minute break. We'll come back. Couple more Brewers thoughts. A Mark Murphy comment as well that I want to play, and then Jesse Temple coming up at 5:30.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Wisco Sports Show. Got a comment from Mark Murphy regarding the tush push. Jesse Temple going to join us in 10 minutes to talk Badgers, his weekly spot. It's very good. This is a good one. We've been on a tear, Jesse and me, but we got loaded phone lines in the meantime, so let's knock them out. Line number 1, 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
So you want to sleep better on an airplane?
I do, Rico. More than anything. I want to sleep, period. Forget sleeping better. I'll take anything I can get.
All right, first question. Do you have one of those travel pillows?
A neck pillow?
Yeah.
I do, yes.
All right. Spin it around.
I've done I feel like I look so stupid. I'll go side to side because it doesn't, keeping the gap in the front doesn't do anything for you. Your head still goes all the way down. Spin. Okay. So I'm not crazy. I can do that. Yep. I can do that.
All right. Question number 2. Are you ready?
Yep.
Drink heavily.
Really?
Yes. You're going to Iceland. It's going to take 6 hours. Trust me. Get loaded in the beginning. If you have to have a little plastic flask because the TSA isn't going to take it from you. I'm kidding. That's an Amtrak thing. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I don't think you can bring booze of any volume through TSA. Can you? I don't know. I've never tried.
No, you're not supposed to. No, you can't.
You're
not supposed to unless it's in like in a closed bottle in a box and But you should put it in your carry-on. No, you put the pillow so the fluff, the thick part is in your chin.
Okay.
And then you kind of lean to your side and boom. I can't sleep on my back, but hey, I slept on a train. I took a 1-month train trip around the Western U.S. And it helped when I was sleeping at night.
I like that. Well, I can do that. I'm going to stop at Walgreens, see if there's any medication that could perhaps help me. I appreciate it, Rico. We just got loaded phone lines. I can do that. I can do that with a neck pillow. I am more than willing to do that. I'm just not a big drinker. You guys, I don't drink that much. I don't think that's the answer for me. I think I just get sweaty. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Eric on I-90.
Good evening, Eric on I-90. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am excellent.
So you can go to Walgreens. When you go to Walgreens to get some sleeping pills,
okay,
you can get a full neck brace. Just get a full neck brace.
Just like one that
That's all you got to do.
like an injury neck brace.
Yeah, full neck brace. I don't need it. I can sleep anywhere. It's a superpower of mine.
Interesting.
But yeah, full neck brace I think would probably. I don't know if that'll work or not. It just
couldn't hurt. It's an idea.
Right? We got Survivor tonight.
Oh shoot, that's right. We do. Yeah, 2 pretty great episodes the last 2 weeks. By the way, it's going to be tonight's. I feel like we're almost due for a letdown tonight. I need any other tribe. I can't see the Green Tribe at Tribal. It'll kill me. But I'm sick of watching Cedric and Say do the same crap every week.
Right, that Cedric has managed to hang in there for a long time. And he's not stupid. He's a surgeon, right? He's a surgeon, so he's not stupid, but he sure seems stupid.
You say he's no. I thought I lost you. He does seem kind of like a dummy. He's definitely the least athletic person on the show. He is useless in challenges.
But I did think it was a good move by that one girl who couldn't get her idol open, and she gave it to that girl with autism. That was a good move by her.
It's very friendly. I don't think, and Eric, I got to run. I don't think that she deserved to keep that idol at that moment in time. She's been holding on to this thing through 3 different episodes, can't get it open. Tribes switch, so now all of a sudden she gets somebody to help her with it. Now she's supposed, it's a weird situation. I almost felt like no one deserved that idol, if I'm being honest. Like, Eva got it open. If you're trying to win the game, I wouldn't have given it away. But if I'm Star, I'm like, why do I deserve this? I've just been holding on because until that idol's open and used, there's going to be no other idols. So the whole tribe's just supposed to sit around with their thumb up their butt. Well, you can't get this thing open, but then they help you get it open and you're supposed to keep it. Like, none of that situation. I don't think anybody deserved anything in that situation. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant. Ed. How are you?
I'm excellent, Ed. What's up?
I'll try to make this a quick call because I know you're moving and grooving.
Yeah, you're the last one.
I'm going to hit on 3 sports teams.
Okay.
1, Bucks. They're in trouble if we don't get Dame Lillard back.
Correct.
And when Portis comes back, I think I'm really stating the obvious here. If you're a Bucks fan, you've been following. I actually went to a Bucks game. I got to tell you, it's a lot different watching him live versus watching him on TV. And I prefer, I'm being honest, I don't like watching him live.
College basketball is a better live experience than an NBA game.
Absolutely. So I'll leave it at that. The Badger basketball team loses another one, a player that no one really knows much about because he's never really.
Chris Hodges?
Yeah.
Graduate
Another
transfer.
guy
Congrats
bites
to
the
that young man, by the way, on getting his degree. I think that's being lost in the shuffle. A true student athlete in every sense.
That's great. I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't do that. So that's awesome. So, he moves on. So I think we're going to have a whole different team next year other than the obvious maybe 2 or 3 starters, and it's going to be a whole different look.
Well, that's college basketball. You keep Nolan Winter and Blackwell and Janicki and Amos, and you rebuild the rest of the thing.
So true. And then my last touch base, got to end on a good note, the Brewers. I just think it's going to be a struggle all year getting runs. I don't think it's going to be where we're going to be bashing and hitting a lot of home runs. I just don't see it. But if they can keep winning and playing sound baseball, and I think this manager is going to bring it out in them. I really do. I just think he's that kind of a player. And you touch on this bunting thing. I think if you preach bunting, your players are going to bunt better and they're going to buy into it. When you have a manager that really is more about going against the numbers,
analytics,
you're not going to bunt good. So maybe Garrett won't get tased or so on as the manager was teasing around.
Yeah.
But he's got a good point there. You've got to believe that you can do it, and having a manager backing you 1,000%, I think that'll open up a lot of opportunities. We're going to see a lot of different small ball.
I think you're right, Corey.
Anyway, I'll let you go. Great to hear your voice.
You as well, Corey. Some good points, well delivered. I just think you got to strike a balance with small ball and regular ball, because once the Brewers get in their head about just trying to do a small ball thing, the field shrinks so much. One more call here. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is John in Cornell.
What's up, John?
Hey, where are you? I just got in my truck and I heard people giving you traveling advice. Where are you traveling to?
We're flying to Iceland tomorrow night.
Iceland. Cool.
Yeah, all right.
My piece of advice, I traveled Europe for a college semester years ago. Piece of advice I'd give you is keep your valuables in your front pocket. Pickpocketers are extremely common in other parts of the world. So if you're traveling around, do not leave your wallet in your back pocket. Always put it in your front pocket, especially if you get on trains. And if you're in tight quarters where there's lots of people, put your hands in your pockets with your valuables, so that way they can't pick your pockets, because that is a thing in Europe and other parts of the world, and it is something you should be watchful for.
Do I look like a wealthy target? If you were a pickpocket, would you look at me and say that I'm flush to the gills with cash?
No, it doesn't matter though. It doesn't matter if you're flush to the gills with cash or not, because people are after passports and other things. So, and if they see you as a tourist, you'll stick out like a sore thumb, unless if you have a way of blending in. But more often than not, they can pick you out like a sore thumb.
Interesting. Well, I've been slowly learning Icelandic for the last 2 years, so joke's on you, John, if you don't think I'm a world traveler.
All right. Cool. All right, man. That's all I had to say. God bless.
That's good advice. Thanks for listening up in Cornell, John. No, I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb. My wool sweaters and my Adidas boots. Yeah, I'm going to stick out. It was the same in New Orleans. Wallet in the front pocket. Speaking of New Orleans, that's where the Super Bowl was. Speaking of the Super Bowl, the NFL, speaking of the NFL owners meetings, probably a needless segue. Mark Murphy describing a little bit when he spoke yesterday about the reason why he's looking and the Packers are looking to ban the tush push.
The NFC Championship game was, players jumping over the line, and I don't think it was good for the game. The two other thing, and then it slows down the game with the penalties, and the other two things that we relied on were from an equity standpoint, that we prohibit on field goals and extra points from pushing. The defense can't push forward, but then on offense we're allowing it. So that was a little bit of an issue, and just the style of the play. I don't. Yeah, it's really more a rugby play than a football play.
I agree with that last part. It looks stupid, and I don't like watching it. The first part is interesting. I do wonder where the tush push discourse would be if not for that sequence in the Commanders game in the NFC Championship game, because that did kind of feel like a moment like this is a clown show. And all of the tush pushes are a clown show. Kaylin Kaler told Bill earlier, ESPN, you should check out that interview. It's in hour number 2. She's been reporting on this thing all week long. The verbiage is going to get tweaked. So it's a lot of health and safety, but there wasn't a lot of great data that exists to back that up. So this thing's going to get tabled, and then the Packers and other interested parties are going to kind of switch the verbiage. And she said earlier today, I think it's going to get banned. I think this rule will get changed. It will be less tush-pushy and more can't abade the ball carrier. Aid and abet. I don't think abade's a word. You get what I'm saying. We're going to make it less centric to the Eagles so it doesn't seem all sour grapesy. And they're going to tweak the health and safety concerns. And she said that she thinks it gets passed. And she probably knows as much about this thing as anybody right now. She's been reporting on it, doing some really good work, some great information all week. And that interview on Bill Shaw, number 2, go listen to that. All right, when we come back, speaking of great information, Jesse Temple from The Athletic will be here for his weekly stop. We talk a little Badgers basketball, the transfer portal, and then what he's seen at spring ball as well. He'll join us next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes.
Jesse Temple is here.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
The Wisco Sports Show. 2 segments left. We'll tie up any loose Brewers ends or any loose tush push ends. It's a weird collection of words. In the last segment, last 5 to 8 minutes of the show right now, making his Wednesday appearance from The Athletic, Jesse Temple. I recorded with him earlier in the afternoon, so we hit the news of Daniel Freitag's transfer, anything else going on with the basketball program, as college basketball. Yes, the tournament is still going on, the Final Four, but a lot of players coming and going, and then we talk football as well as spring practice is underway, and he had a great story about a high-level in-state recruit at Wisconsin who goes to Minnesota and then kind of cocked off about it. So all of that coming up. I did about 13 minutes with Jesse. This is really good. Jesse Temple is here. We're lucky enough to have him every week. You can read his work at The Athletic and listen to him on The Camp and The Swing. And Jesse, I do get questions from listeners. When is The Swing coming out? And I talked to Zach a little bit about this today. You guys probably want to see what settles in the portal. Like, there's no reason in doing a podcast when there's probably going to be breaking news in 24, 48 hours. So I'm telling people it's coming, and it will be. I'm looking forward to it as well. Let's start with Freitag, because I don't think many Badgers fans expected him to transfer. But based on kind of what I've seen, things that have come out and other schools that are interested, was he just not cutting the mustard? Is that what this comes down to? He wasn't quite good enough to earn more playing time yet, at least, than we saw last year?
Yeah, that's certainly the spot that he found himself in. And obviously he was a fan favorite because he was the highest rated recruit of the Greg Gard era, the highest ranked point guard in program history. And when you see those types of things and the dedication that he had to Wisconsin when he could have gone to a number of different schools, you want to see that talent on the court. But you've got to earn your minutes at Wisconsin. And it was very clear early on that he was far behind a lot of these other guys. Even though Greg Gard said from the outset he's got some skills you can't teach and a certain electricity about him, you've got to be able to do a lot of different things. You've got to slow your game down, play good defense, not turn the ball over, be trusted. And at a certain point, Wisconsin had to make a decision, and he was just not part of the plans this year. And because of where Wisconsin is with the transfer portal and the need to win every year, you are going to go in and try and recruit over guys with experienced veterans. So Daniel was in a spot where he may have had the same role next year, and that's not something that people want to wait around for. If you're that talented, you want to find a place where you can play.
And you know me, I'm old fashioned. I'm an old soul. And I got some calls this week that were like, well, you know, what happened to sitting back and biding your time and, you know, earning your spot? And I'm like, I still like that idea. I do. But that's kind of what last year was. You know what I mean? Like, I think Freitag was perfectly fine. Maybe he wasn't psyched about it, but I think he accepted his role last year on this awesome team with the idea, okay, year number 2, all these seniors graduate, then I slide in. I think in college basketball these days, it's unrealistic to ask any player to wait more than a year. I think waiting 1 year is the new waiting 3 years. You know what I mean? Is that like a fair framing?
Yeah, I think it is, and I would tend to agree. I have that sentiment sometimes as well about the bygone era of yesteryear, which really isn't all that many years ago, but we have to acknowledge and accept that this is a different style and system and realm of what college athletics are. So it's hard to sit around and wait because there'd be no guarantee after year 2 that Wisconsin wouldn't go out and be in the same situation and say, well, we need a senior as a stopgap right now, and you're going to have to fight for backup minutes or something like that. So I'm all for a player wanting to go somewhere where he can play. You only get 5 years to do this. And for him, 4 years because he didn't redshirt this year. Yeah, he played in some games, even if he didn't play a ton.
Do you think he and his camp, the Freitags, do you think they felt mistreated or spurned by Wisconsin on their way out?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, it goes both ways, right? A year ago, Chucky Hepburn left Wisconsin and people were stunned. And it was like, well, you got to leave because the money is there and you might not make it down the road. But the other side of the coin is Wisconsin's coaching staff has to make the best decisions in the interests of the program. So it's tough because I know that Daniel talked about the relationship that he had with Greg when it came to the recruiting process and why he picked the Badgers. And this is not how he wanted it to go down at Wisconsin.
Yeah. And I did notice in his statement, he did not thank the coaching staff. He also didn't thank Jack Janicki, which maybe is a coincidence. I don't know. When you do this job and you follow these little details, you just circle things like that. It was interesting. To the gridiron, you've been covering spring practice. Your column this week, two things that you mentioned in your headline. Let's just talk about them. They're bigger on defense. They need to be bigger on defense. Do they look bigger on defense? Is that growth and I guess progress that they were able to make this offseason so far?
I think the two biggest takeaways I've had from spring practice so far, and Wisconsin has finished 5, 4 of them have been open to reporters. It's not so much about an individual standout or a position group. It's the general structure of the offense and defense that makes it feel like they're better positioned to have success in the Big Ten. Now, that doesn't mean I'm saying they're going to go 9-3 next year, but if you're Luke Fickell and you've consistently said you want to lean on the offensive line more, which is something he said repeatedly last year, well, have a system in place that allows you to do that. And now they have that with more physical bodies, with different personnel groupings that I think this offense looks like what it should have been all along under Luke Fickell, where you can move some things forward with the program and keep some of the old staples. And then in turn, defensively, well, you say the last 5 games as a defense, that's a big reason up front why you didn't have success and this team was worn down and wasn't physical. You can't give up 329 yards rushing to Iowa. Like, that is so unacceptable. And so they've made some changes defensively too. Yeah, they are much bigger. You look at the D line, so many 300-pound bodies. Basically everybody they brought in from the portal at worst or at the least is 297 pounds. And that has been very noticeable watching practice.
And you wrote the same thing about the offense, and I'm looking at your story right now. It's not about an individual standout, the overall approach. So how is the approach, I guess, big picture, what looks different with the offense through spring practice compared to what it looked like with Phil Longo?
Well, obviously, it's not an air raid spread attack. They've got a lot of 2 tight end sets, but to me, it's the pre-snap motion. It's really all the window dressing that goes into how they develop a play, because they'll do all sorts of movements and shifts and stuff during the play and then end up running something simple. But what it does is it challenges the defense and tests their eyes to read everything up the middle, on the edges. And then once you get comfortable with something, let's say it's a handoff to the running back up the middle, all of a sudden they might run a jet sweep or something out of the same formation. And because you have so much movement. And I asked Luke Fickell about that after practice. And one of the things that he said that I thought was interesting is essentially we can't allow the defense to tee off on us. And I'm not just talking about the pass game. I'm talking about the run game.
I like that a lot. Jesse Temple is here. You can read his story about practice this week, and he has one about a specific recruit that chose Minnesota over Wisconsin. And I want to ask you about that last. But before we do that, is there a chance that they could have some more star power or some players on the boundary that Badgers fans can maybe get excited about, but also can be game breakers for this offense? Like, I know Ket Kahuna is hurt. Their transfer Mark Hamper from Idaho hasn't been there. What does that group look like? Because I think they've had very nice receivers the last couple of years. I don't know that they've had bona fide game breaker star power wide receivers in recent years.
Well, I'm certainly not going to proclaim that they have bona fide star power wide receivers. Yeah. We've seen what Vinny Anthony can do. So I think he's one that you can safely say, because of what he's done at Wisconsin, should be your number 1 wide receiver. He's certainly earned that. And Tretch Kahuna, when healthy, could be your top slot or however they want to utilize him. What's interesting this spring is because Mark Hamper hasn't participated the last couple practices, because Tretch Kahuna is out with what the team is calling a lower body injury, but looks like a leg or foot injury. They've got 8 scholarship wide receivers. So a lot of these guys are getting a whole bunch more opportunities. One guy I'm really intrigued by is Ohio State transfer Jaden Ballard. Even though he played 4 years at Ohio State and only caught 11 passes, I think he's someone who just looks like he will fit in here. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up as a starter opposite Vinny Anthony. But there are a lot of other guys that have made plays. Quincy Burrows has been here a couple years now. He caught a couple of 35-yard touchdown passes during practice on Tuesday. Tyrell Henry probably made the play of the day. He caught a ball from Billy Edwards Jr. for a 35-yard score where he leapt over a linebacker and caught it in the only spot where it could have been caught, right in front of a safety. So they've got some talent. I really like Eugene Hilton Jr. He's a freshman early enrollee who consistently stands out. I don't know whether he's ready to contribute immediately, but there is talent at wide receiver, and that's at least encouraging for the Badgers.
Well, and that's exciting too. And I know they've been missing their quarterbacks the last couple of years. So that's been a huge part of why they've struggled on offense. But every once in a while, like, you need a wide receiver to go make a play for a quarterback. And they had some inopportune drops last year in big games, I think, at the Penn State and in the Oregon games. So let's talk about your story about Gavin Meyer. This got Badgers fans really whipped up. It's Meyer, right? It's not Mayer. I'm saying it correctly. So he's from Racine. He's a highly touted offensive lineman. Parents were Badgers. They really wanted him. He chooses Minnesota. And then he opens up to you and he talks about his process and throws a little shade at Wisconsin. So talk about how this story came together and what you learned about this recruit that got away from UW.
Yeah, well, he went to Janesville Parker, so he's only about 45 minutes away from Madison. And the premise of the story was simple. Here's a guy who, by 24/7 Sports, is ranked as the #1 player in the 2026 class in Wisconsin. I think the composite has him at #2, but either way, one of the top players in the state. Why did you end up picking Minnesota, especially considering Wisconsin offered you a scholarship and he visited Wisconsin twice in March? So I didn't know what he was going to say. He could have just said, hey, I like both schools. I like Minnesota a little more. It was a tough decision, but I have to stick with my gut and my heart. That would have been fine. I would have written that story. And what he ended up saying is, essentially, I don't want to throw shade on Wisconsin, and he ended up throwing some shade on Wisconsin by saying, I have to take into account that this isn't what Wisconsin used to be. It's not Barry Alvarez's Wisconsin. And he went on to say that if they have one more losing season, who knows? Luke Fickell is signed, but anything can happen. And I thought that was a really interesting perspective. I think there are a lot of layers to this, and Zach and I discussed it on the camp. I'm not sitting here saying because Wisconsin didn't get a guy who's a 3-star prospect and the number 40 offensive tackle that the program is crumbling or that they won't be able to recruit in-state guys. Luke has made that a priority. He said as much. They've gotten 8 in-state recruits in the last 2 classes. But I think there's something to be said for the way he talked about Wisconsin. And you can say, oh, he's parroting whatever PJ Fleck's message was to him. Maybe he is, but Wisconsin
some have said that. Zach has said that pretty directly or posited that theory directly.
Yes, but Wisconsin has missed out on a lot of top-level recruits inside the state in recent years. And I understand that they filled those spots with very talented players from outside the state, so maybe it doesn't matter. On the other hand, we saw what helped make Wisconsin successful for a long time. You could at least try and explain away why Wisconsin didn't get a lot of those players. Like 2022, well, it was COVID. They couldn't visit Wisconsin for 15 months. I remember Paul Chris talking about this. Their biggest advantage is getting local kids around the players. They didn't have that. And then you have guys that maybe Wisconsin didn't reoffer, or maybe they're a legacy to Notre Dame, whatever the story may be. This is the first time I've heard an in-state recruit just straight up say, like, Wisconsin has not been good. Minnesota has won 3 out of the last 4 against them. And I can't be certain what the future is going to be here because they just had a losing season. And if they have another one, what does that mean for me? So that to me is what was most alarming about what he said, even if, again, in a different year, he may be the number 5 ranked player and not the number 1. It's just not a particularly strong class. I still think what he said is important.
I think it matters. And maybe it's the effect of the last couple of years, the chickens kind of coming home to roost. I guess my question, maybe you can't add to this. You probably can't. Maybe you're not interested in adding to this. It's like, okay, if not Wisconsin, then why Minnesota? Like, the programs aren't that different. You know what I mean? They've won the Axe the last couple of years. So maybe he just loves the Axe and he just wants to be able to swing it. I don't know. It's not like Minnesota is this lights out program either, but maybe PJ Fleck's messaging landed. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's fair too. And I point out in the story, like, Fleck has a losing record in the Big Ten. The reason he's got a winning record overall, I think he's 23-3 in non-conference games. And Minnesota has not been a great program. So there is that you must acknowledge. I think he just really liked Minnesota. He went up for a camp last summer. He liked the offensive line coach, Brian Callahan. He seemed to vibe with what PJ Fleck's message was. And sometimes guys like that. So he ended up going there. But it's a story because of what he said, because he's from Janesville. And, like, frankly, this is the type of kid Wisconsin traditionally should get. His mom got a master's degree at UW-Madison. His dad went to school there for a year. He visited Madison as a recruit 7 to 8 times. So I think all of that makes this more interesting.
It's not like he felt overlooked by UW. Like, that's not what this story is. And sometimes those stories are written. You find it odd that a 17-year-old kid's like willing to blast it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, this guy was not afraid to say what he was thinking.
Not necessarily odd. And the other thing is he was very complimentary of the coaching staff. Like, I think that matters here too. And it's the way I frame the story. Like, you get a kid that says there were no red flags with the staff. I really liked them. He had a good relationship with AJ Blazik, who I think is a tremendous recruiter. well, that should be an absolute slam dunk for a kid from Janesville. But the fact that they haven't won, again, I think that's something that recruits are starting to take notice of.
Well, and we're probably going to start feeling some of the effects of the last couple of seasons, because one down year, that's fine. Programs had that throughout the recent history, but a couple of them in a row, I find it very interesting. It's a great story. Everyone should go read it. We will listen to the camp and the swing and read your work, Jesse. Thank you for the time.
Thanks, Grant.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Thanks, guys. Bryce, the decision to drop down the bunt, was that your decision, or what did Pat Murphy tell you right before you went up?
He said if it's open and you feel good, then do it. So, chose to do it.
Bryce, how hard is it to execute that? It's got to be the right spot, right time, right?
Yeah, you just got to stick your nose in it and get it down.
What can you say about the job that the team did to pull off this win, starting with Freddie Peralta, 8 innings, 1 run ball, 8 strikeouts to set the tone early?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, what he did is great. Kept us in the game, pitched his game, and it's great. It's so much fun to watch.
How fun are these games to play in, Bryce? I know defensively there were a lot of great plays made behind Freddie Peralta, the bullpen as well, Trevor McGill, Abner Uribe, Jared Koenig closing it out.
Yeah, it's really fun. Those guys are so good. It's just fun to play defense with them. They're just throwing gas and striking people out. It's been a great time.
This team has flipped the script, a 4-game losing streak, and now your first series win. How much have the last 2 games just changed the momentum for you guys?
Yeah, it's so early in the season. You can't really look at that. You got to forget it and move on and play our game. So I think the boys did that.
How's the finger, Bryce? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
No worries there. All right, Bryce Terang, congratulations. Second career walk-off for him.
Thank you.
Engaging as always. Very brief, short and to the point. Bryce Terang after his walk-off bunt. It felt like as that game progressed, and I really felt it in the 10th, I'm like, no one's roping a double or hitting a solo shot to end this game. Like, this is going to have to be a bases-loaded walk, bases-loaded fielder's choice. Like, it's going to have to be something dumb and stupid. And I don't mean to call a bunt something dumb and stupid because there's real skill and timing and execution. But that game was not going to have some uber satisfying ending. It's just not how it played out. A couple of texts, 608-321-1670. Coyote Mike, I think, makes a great point. And Mike, I think you're reiterating a lot of the points that I've been trying to make throughout the show, mostly poorly. Me poorly, not you. You say balancing classic small ball baseball with analytical long ball is the way baseball is meant to be played. Regularly favoring or ignoring one over the other ultimately will not be successful for players on the field or fans in the stands. I especially agree with the fans in the stands. Will you be able to listen to the Brewer games? Have a super fantastic time in Iceland? I don't know. Probably not. I could not get a lick of March Madness in Mexico 2 weeks ago. It's all soccer. Spanish HBO. Ha-be-o. I actually don't know. I think that's how you say those letters in Spanish. Alan O'Clair makes an interesting point following up on what Jesse and I were talking about. Says, I hate to hear it, but I have a hard time arguing with Gavin Meyer's reasoning about Wisconsin. Here's hoping this year goes better on the field and we don't have in-state recruits looking at Wisconsin and saying, no, thanks. The funny part, and I think Jesse I think he did a good job kind of speaking to this point. I guess I don't blame an in-state recruit going, well, why would I go to Wisconsin just to get rolled by Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa? Like, why would I do that? I get that. Going to play for PJ Fleck. I mean, they have a below 500 career record in the Big Ten. Why? Unless, and this is what Jesse said, and I think it's a good point, and it's a point that, like, as a sports talk radio host or as a sports fan, we don't want to think this way, but it's reality, it's truth. He probably just liked Minnesota. He probably just liked the campus. I don't know. He went up there. He's like, I want to go to school here. Sometimes it's that simple. It's not always about who's going to finish higher in the Big Ten standings. Although it's kind of what he made it sound like when he, talked about Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin and Minnesota are frighteningly close these days. I mean, Minnesota beat USC last year. What was Wisconsin's best win? Rutgers? Okay. It's not nothing, but it's hardly impressive. I don't know. This is a huge year because if they don't start to reverse some trends and bring back some intrinsic pride and in-state excitement for what they're doing, then this is only going to get worse. And I think what we're seeing right now is, so the last year with Paul Chryst, not great. The first year with Luke Fickell, not great. And then the second year with Luke Fickell, even worse. And recruits are going, okay, so any program can have a down year. I mean, Bielema's teams had down years, even when Wisconsin football was operating at a much higher clip. And part of that is the conference and the competition. But like any school, any program can have a down year. 3 or 4 of them in a row. It's like, why am I going there? Especially if you just like another campus better. And especially if you just would rather go somewhere else. And sometimes that's how it is for these kids. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, maybe you just like the Twin Cities more. Like Minneapolis more than Madison. Okay, sure. There's some real similarities there. That's the ironic part, is like Minneapolis and Madison. They're size very different, but some similar themes. I should have brought it up. We don't need to get into that. I will be back next Friday. I will be live at Flipside in La Crosse. So to our WKTY listeners, we're lucky to have you, a lot of you there during Oktoberfest. Would love to see your faces. You're more than welcome to join me on the air if you want to grab a mic and a headset in lieu of calls. I will also on Thursday be at the Packers Hunger Task Force event, their tailgate tour at Stony Creek in Onalaska. So if you have purchased a ticket, and I hope you have, to raise some great money for a great cause, should be a cool event. I will be there as well. Say hello. Otherwise, the next time I'll talk to you will be next Friday. Sorry. Got a chance to go to Iceland for free because my girlfriend's good at her job. Not going to turn that down. I'll talk to you soon.